Hi guys, it's Gabby again, and today we're going to do our arithmetic explicit equations, which are more commonly known as linear equations, but you might not know this, but they're slope. Linear equations, so linear equations, arithmetic equations, and slope are all the same thing. So if I start talking about slope, or if I start talking about linear equations, or if I start talking about arithmetic explicit equations, I'm talking about the same thing. They're all one thing, so you might know them by one of the three names. Okay. So if you don't remember slope, here's a quick review that might get you to remember slope. So slope, you found slope by doing rise over run. You had your little slope man, which was the puff, puff, positive, nice, nice, negative. This is zero fun. This is zero fun. And undefined. Or you could have done the mathematical way to find your slope, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which I'll show you later. Which, if you learned one of these ways, you've already learned about slope, and you've probably learned how to find it from a graph. So, slope is linear, meaning a straight line. So, unlike our exponential graphs, which are like a big swoop, our slope is just going to be a straight graph. So, so graphs will look like this. So this is your positive graph, that's your negative graph, that's your zero graph. See, it doesn't even touch the x, or I mean it could go along the x, but it just goes right there, so that's 0. And then here's your undefined, which is right here, this little guy right here. And he goes parallel to the y. So your 0 goes parallel to the x, and your undefined goes parallel to the y. Okay, so what's our linear equation, or our arithmetic explicit equation? And it's labeled too. That's the help. Okay, so our equation is y equals mx plus b. So I've labeled this here. So m is always going to be your slope, and b is going to be your y-intercept. So if you don't know what a y-intercept is, here's an example. So this is my little graph here, and this is my line right there. And that dot right there is where it hits the y. So that's your y-intercept. Okay, and then your slope is if you made the little triangle with the rise over run where you counted how many up it went and how many over it went, you would see that was your slope. Okay, so we're going to say the slope of this line is 1. So I've made myself a little xy chart right here, which you might have also learned about, where you had your x and y and your corresponding points. So we're going to say that my x is 1 and my y is 1. My x is 2, my y is 2, and my x is 3, but we don't know what it is yet, because we don't see that part yet. So we have to find it. So that's where our y and our x come into play. So what we can do is we can find the slope one of two ways. So say I don't have a graph, I just have this. So now I can find it using my method y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which I have written right here. 2 minus 1, so I'm using 2 minus 1 over 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 equals 1 over 1. So we know that our slope is 1. So if we were to plug this back into our equation, and we're trying to find the y value, of course, so we're going to plug our 1 in for 1. And I have accidentally switched these. So imagine that this 1 was in the parentheses and the 3 was outside, because our x is, never mind, sorry, I didn't switch them. Okay, our x is 3, so it goes in the parentheses, and our slope is 1, because we just found that out right there. Okay, so we have 1 times 3, and our y-intercept, we're going to pretend that that little graph right there says it's 0. And you could also do that by going, since we know it's 1 over 1, we can just minus 1, and it would be 0. It would be 0, 0. It would run through the origin. So we know, so if we were to just solve this, we'd go 1 times 3 is 3 plus 0, so it's just 3. So your y is equal to 3. So that's how we get this over here. And that is how you do an arithmetic explicit equation. I will come back with another example in a minute. Okay guys, I'm back with my example. So I have an example. I make $10 an hour. I'm getting a raise of $5 more. Yay me, I'm getting a raise. Okay, now I make $15 an hour. How much money do I make in 12 hours? Okay, so I'm going to underline all the important stuff. So I make $10. So that was, they want to trick you up with this. Because if you think, oh, I make $10 an hour, 10 times 12, $120 an hour. Boom, done. But that's not right. You're getting a raise of $5 more. So now you make $15 an hour. So you have to be careful and read through the problem. And it helps to highlight what's important. Okay, so now I make $15 an hour. How much money do I make in 12 hours? Whoops. Okay. So Here's my equation, y equals mx plus b. So we know that m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. And y and x are our y and x values. So, quick reminder here, x is always time, because time is always independent and x is always independent. You will hear me say that a lot. It's really important to get in your head. Okay, so we know that y equals 15 over 1x plus 0. Wait, stop, Gabby. Where did I get all that information? Well, I'll show you. Okay, so y equals 15 over 1. Where did we get that? That's our slope, because we know m is slope, and we've just replaced it, because all these are variables. So our 15 is $15 an hour. So that's going to be your slope. So for every 1 hour, you're making $15. And then you have your x, which you always just keep as x unless you're trying to find one of your variables, in which case we are, because we're trying to find y. So plus 0. Well, why is it plus 0? Because it never says in this equation that I make a baseline salary. So if I don't go to work for the day, I don't get any money for that day. I make I made $10 an hour, now I make $15 an hour. I don't get $10 plus $15 an hour. So it's going to go straight through the origin because I don't get any money to begin with. That's not great. So, we know that our x is 12 hours because our x is always time, because x is always independent. So we know that our x is 12 hours, and we know that we'll plug that in to find our y, because we're wanting how much money do I make? Well, money is dependent on time. So 15 times 12 plus 0, because we're working 12 hours, we're getting $15 an hour, we're trying to find our y. So if you're really great with multiplication, you know 15 times 12 is 180. Don't worry, I had to use a calculator too. Okay, so we know that our y is 180, so that means that you make $180 in 12 hours. And that is how you solve a arithmetic explicit equation, or a slope equation, or a linear equation without having a graph or a XY chart. That's just using the equation right here and your word problem. Okay, I'll see you next time. Hope this video helps, and if you have any issues, just ping me.